Hi, I'm Lisa Fletcher, and you're in the stream. Today, as Libya struggles with militias and rising instability, an army of young activists is doing everything it can to keep the country moving forward. Our digital producer, Malika Bilal, is grabbing all your live feedback as it comes in. She's going to get as much of it as she can into the show today. So, Malika, more than 2 years really have passed since the start of the Libyan revolution. The government is struggling in a lot of different areas, and we're going to get into that more in the show. But there are also a lot of positive things that are happening. There are definitely a lot of positive changes that have happened. But we also wanted to know, what are the challenges that the Libyan youth are facing today? So we asked that question on Twitter, and Khadija Ali writes back. She says, unemployment, poor education, lack of opportunities, and no loans, no financial freedom. Now, for those of you at home, we want to know what you think as well. So join the conversation by tweeting us your questions and your comments using the hashtag AJStream. To Malika's right is Karim Mezran, a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Rafik Harriri Center for the Middle East, focusing on the process of change in North Africa. Karim, welcome to the stream.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
It's nice to have you here. Also with us is a group of young Libyans working on various projects across the country. They're in our Google Plus Hangout, and we'll be sharing their ideas, the details of their work, and the concerns that they've got with us in just a moment. But of course, these Hangouts are for you as well, and we want you to be in one. So make sure you just go to that link at the bottom of your screen and add us to your circles.
Hey, my name is Andrew Slack. I'm the Executive Director of the Harry Potter Alliance, and I'm in the stream.
Rogue militias unwilling to lay down their arms are challenging Libya's security just 18 months after the downfall of Muammar Gaddafi. Plagued by tribal fragmentation, attacks on government authorities, and ongoing human rights violations, Libya's new leadership has struggled to establish stability. Militias played a major role in the overthrow of Gaddafi, but today, some of them are running their own prisons. They've threatened Christians, women, Sufis, as well as former Gaddafi sympathizers with violence and with desecration of holy sites. In March, a Coptic church in Benghazi was torched by an unidentified armed group. And in a separate incident, 50 Egyptian Christians were arrested and detained by a militia in Benghazi for allegedly proselytizing. Sufi shrines have also been targeted, with more than 70 attacks reported since the overthrow of Gaddafi. In another incident, a YouTube video shows an unidentified group publicly lashing an alleged thief in Sirte. Despite these struggles, many of Libya's youth are stepping in, and they're acting where government cannot. They're creating projects and initiatives to pave a path to future prosperity. So now we speak to some of them about Libya today and the prospects for tomorrow. One example of Libya's young and enthusiastic activist is Ayat Mneina. She is the founder of Libyan Youth Movement, also known as Shabab Libya. That's an organization aiming to unite Libyan youth inside and outside of the country. She joins us via Skype. Ayat, welcome to the stream.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
So, Karim, I want to start with you. A lot has happened in the last 2 years. Including some disappointment over the effectiveness of the new government and their ability to really control these radicalized militias. But at the same time, we see this youth movement that continues to push forward, make positive change. Kind of give us your view of the state of Libya today.
It's kind of a roller coaster. There are certain things that are going better, certain things that are going worse, certain situations which are improving, and certain which are not improving. Talking about rogue militias, I like to specify that there are various militias. There are also those who are legitimate, in the sense that there are the people who really fought for the revolution, who feel that their role is still that one of maintaining or being the guards of the revolution. They don't trust the government. They see that the government has a lot of former Gaddafians in it. They don't believe in them, so they say, I've heard this argument when people says, well, you haven't cleaned the cities, you haven't begun building the schools, you have not begun rebuilding the country. Why are you obsessed in taking the weapons out of me, that I'm the guy who have fought for bringing you to power? Having said that, there are a lot of militias which are rogue, in the sense that are full of criminals that try to do things that are against the legality and against the construction of the state. So we have to make this distinction. There is a government that lacks in large part the capacity to act, and has problems in doing things. They are trying to build an army, they're trying to build a police, but they probably don't know how to do or have difficulties in doing that. And so that's it's a difficult
push and pull
situation.
Yeah. Ayat, what's happened to the Libyan youth once the revolution ended?
The Libyan youth who have largely stepped up to the plate when the revolution happened and were the forefront of the uprising have basically become the background and haven't necessarily been given the opportunity and the due attention and respect that they really deserve in order to contribute positively to Libyan society today. That being said, Libyan youth are just, you know, huge potentials and huge taps of energy and resources for energy that they will not let, you know, them being overlooked deter them. They're doing their own things. They're setting up their own, basically building a civil society that never existed before. They're taking their own issues and personal passions to the forefront, establishing whatever it is that they see, that they think that they want to have in New Libya. And while those efforts are very commendable, without the support and recognition and appreciation of it, it will dwindle. I mean, we see that happening given any effort. Without the support and without the continued reinforcement and coming together of people, including the government, we do risk having that kind of spark go out. And so Libyan youth are continuing to amaze us every day, but you do see that there could be a plateau soon, and without the actual due attention from the government and from those decision makers, we risk losing that potential, and that would be a huge shame.
Well, Ayat, something that you just said about Libyan youth going out and making the change on their own, it struck a chord with our community. Nada tweets in, being marginalized over their supposed lack of experience by the government. She's referencing the youth. They're trying to make change on their own. But then there's a tweet here from Almasi, and Mohamed Eljarh, I'm going to throw this one to you. He says, the youth have realized they have no say. They're not represented. So, Mohamed, my question to you is, have the youth distanced themselves from the political scene? And if they have, why is that?
I couldn't... I think the question was related to why the youth distant themselves.
Exactly.
If I'm correct.
Mm-hmm.
One of the issues, I think Ayat made it, sort of gave the answer there, that they haven't been given. So it feels like the youth in Libya are expecting it to be given to them. Instead, I think they should take it rather than wait for it to be given to them. That's one thing. But the other thing that I will again take out of Ayat's answer is the fact that we need sustainable effort. We should not shy away as young people because we faced some difficulties. That should not be our approach. We should make sure that we have sustainable effort to make sure that that happens. And one of the other problems, I think, is the fact that we did not have a lot of experience. We lack some skills, and sometimes we lack the direction, the fact that the ability to be able to lobby and campaign for ideas and make sure that we use the youth power to influence the politics in Libya.
He brings up an interesting point, Karim. You know, overthrowing Gaddafi was largely the result of foreign intervention. So while a lot of these activist groups and militias, I think, perhaps felt like they could take the credit for that, was that sort of misplaced credit, and now they're finding themselves in this position where maybe they didn't have all the tools that they needed to create this new Libya that they're looking for?
Partially that is true, even though they really fought and they really carried on the torch of the revolution. But this happens, I think, in every revolution, especially after the old elite gets swept away. The new ones have to undertake a period of learning. The problem now is that, and Mohammed is perfectly right, the problem now is that what we need is the learning moment. that is lacking. The generation in power, the government, they do not represent the youth, are in a sense closing their ranks and not allowing the emergence of a new generation to come up. You see that in the lack of investment in media, in the lack of investment in training, in the lack of investment into having an open, inclusive process of decision making. And this leaves the youth think they have not given it to us, as Ayat said, which is the feeling that a lot of the people I talk to have. I mean, they are not. The revolution is also a generational revolution. We have to think about it. It's closer to what 1968 was to Europe, in my opinion, than to 1991 or other vision. It's the youth who are trying to fight for change. And changing the dynamics, not only political but also in society. Get out of the closeness, of the claustrophobia of the patriarchal system and the patriarchal family into a place where the young can really express itself.
Ayat, I know you've been very critical of the old guard. Do you feel like collaboration is possible?
I think if given the opportunity, a collaboration or an attempt to collaborate is something that we definitely have to go through. But completely ignoring that the demographic, which makes up 60% of the country, is not working for us, and we can see that every day. So I think youth, and I personally think that I would be definitely open to the idea of collaboration, and we can only have trial and error at this point. But we do know that we can't go back and we can't continue having the government elites ignore basically the rest of the population. And I truly believe that when you deal with the youth and the youth get a chance to start making these changes, you really are making societal changes.
Well, Seraj, in our Google Plus Hangout, you are one of the people that made sure that your voice was heard. You made sure that change was made during the height of the revolution. I pulled up on my screen something called Alive.in Libya, and that was one of the first online video reporting tools. It's a lot of places that journalists went to get information on the ground by activists, citizen activists that were uploading videos for the world to see. Now, Seraj, earlier we heard from Mohamed in the Hangout, and he said that nothing is going to come to the youth. They're going to have to take it. So I kind of want your thoughts on that. How do they go about taking it if they're politically inexperienced?
I mean, this is a point that comes up a lot, the political experience and how people like Swab Jalil led the government through a period, led the country through a difficult period through the NTC. But the thing that we're forgetting here is almost everyone in Libya has zero experience. We're on a level ground here. Gaddafi ran everything. If you had experience, you had experience within Gaddafi's regime, within the way that he ran things. Nobody at this point has any extensive experience of parliament work, political work, ministries, etc., all of that. So I think that's a great chance for you to step up and really prove their abilities. The experience is no factor now. It's not a real factor, just an imaginary factor that some people seem older, they seem to have more experience, but it's really not about experience. At this point, it's about ability, and it's about the youth and what they can do.
Mohamed, a very real factor that a lot of the young activists in Libya are concerned about is the fact that some young people are being recruited by these radicalized militias. How do you deal with the extremists? How do you combat that within this youth movement?
Well, to be able to combat extremism, because what I feel is that some of the young people in Libya find refuge with extremist groups. For example, they feel that they belong somewhere, and they feel that extreme groups can actually give them a voice. Now, what I think we need to do in Libya is to provide an alternative where we can actually, the elite, the political elite, the young people, the initiatives like the Libyan Youth Movement, we need to make sure that we provide alternative platforms, different ones for different segments of the youth society, to be able to make their voices heard, to be able to contribute to change in Libya, and to be able to make that a change. Mm-hmm. Unless we do that, it will be very difficult for us to combat extremism within the youth population, because they will try and always move towards extremism, because that's what's going to give them the voice. Ayat is going to give them the voice.
Ayat, you're working very hard with young people to introduce these ideas that foster democracy. Give us some specific examples of what you're doing.
Actually, one of the most recent projects that we're working on, because our work during the revolution was so heavily based on the media and the international audience and how they received Libyans and how they feel towards the Libyan youth, we thought that that was a pivotal and a very important aspect of the revolution. And given that post-revolution, the focus on Libya has been largely on the progress or lack of progress of the government and the security situation and all these other factors that are really true and are happening. However, the Libyan youth have been basically, as I said earlier, ignored. And our latest project, called the Libyan Youth Voices, seeks to basically give back the voice to these young people and start highlighting the issues that they face on a daily basis, start expressing the opinions that they have in an effort to really put some spotlight on these young people and give them a say, both on an international platform. And so we are disseminating these articles internationally in English, but also on a local, in a national level as well. And we are translating them into Arabic, whatever the input was. It's all going to go back to the Libyan communities and into the streets. And we believe that fostering, effective dialogue, respect, and promoting people to share their opinions and have a safe environment to do that, and not face repercussions for these opinions, which are basically one of the main reasons why we have problems in Libya today. There is no respect for this freedom of expression that we have attained through the revolution. There is no real protection of these rights. So that's kind of one of the most recent projects we're working on. And we were just
showing some shots from your website. We'll tweet out that link as well.
Definitely. And a lot of this kind of begs the question, can change happen when the economy is not in the best shape that it could be? And I want to go to Ahmed on the phone. Ahmed, you're in Libya. You were, very integral in the uprising, but after it was over, you had to work. So tell us your story and how you found that, in dealing with the post-revolutionary reality on the ground.
I think a big amount of the problem is providing opportunity for the young. What seemed to happen is all the opportunity was provided in terms of security and militias, and the government funded those militias, I think, in part to keep people satisfied in terms of having an income. But what should have more been done is that investments were made to create jobs for the rest of the sectors. It shouldn't have just been focused on funding militias, and it's not done for the long run. Funding the militias is just temporary. So now they're even having issues, the government is, with disbanding those militias because people saw it as a source of steady income.
And then in addition to jobs, there's also the school system. There's a tweet here from Mohammed who says, I believe a way to revive the Libyan youth is to create community centers or services. Also, schools need a major change. Ahmed, what's your view on the educational system?
Right now, I think the biggest investment that needs to be made in Libya, and I'm all for the youth getting involved here and now, but what needs to be considered also is that we need to invest in our youth so that in the future they'll be much more capable. Right now, we don't have the means, like it was said by Seraj, the means in order to act politically like we want to, on account of we don't have the experience as youth and also the elders. So I think the number one focus right now should be on education, in order to invest so that the future will be better, even if now there's a struggle and it's not so smooth, and the future generations will have it much easier.
Hussam Muntasser, I want to go to you. You're working as a doctor in the UK, which brings up this issue of brain drain, which is a concern for many in Libya. There are a lot of determined young people there, but what's it going to take to keep them in the country, fighting the good fight and trying to push this course forward to bring a better Libya to everyone?
Well, the most important thing for me as a Libyan professional working abroad who wish to go back to Libya, hopefully in the future, is that we should have a fair and merit-based system to work, whether that's in the private sector or even in the public sector. Up until the revolution, at least, for someone to advance through work, to get promotions or to even actually get a job, you'd need you'd need to know someone. You'd need someone to back you, to get you through. I mean, talking as a doctor, speaking to other young colleagues who are still in Libya, they feel that they don't have a future at work in Libya because the same old people are still in control. No one can move upward. No one can assume any position because it's there's a sort of monopoly here that we can't break through. We have barriers that, unlike junior doctors here who can develop themselves professionally, they just have to compete on equal basis with other doctors. Whereas in Libya, we just have this barrier of nepotism, corruption that we can't break.
Uneven playing field.
Right. Karim, I wonder though if we're asking for too much too soon. You know, Fatima on Twitter says Libya is still under a de facto government. It needs to go through a proper electoral process necessary for its reestablishment. Also, they're trying to draft a constitution, so they're dealing with a lot.
No, they are dealing with a lot, but they are dealing with a lot in a paralytical sense. They haven't done much. They should have done it much quicker. And I agree with what our friends are saying. It is a cultural revolution that is needed. And both Mohamed and Ayat said about the fact that new avenues of participation have to be created. Where is the place where the youth participate? Where is the place where the youth grows? Where is the place where the youth brings its vitality?
These are questions that probably never dawned on anyone. Going from the regime to wanting to go to a democracy, when did anybody have time to really think about these things and talk about them?
But that's what they are doing. That's what they are not doing it in an organized way, but they're doing exactly this. Yeah. They should form political parties, political movement. They should form structure where journals, magazines. That's how the process goes, and their voice is going to be heard only if they get organized, and they are doing that slowly. They are doing that. The problem is this pervasive cultural system that doesn't give the youth any opening. Somebody said nepotism, corruption. It's all true. It's all real.
You know what, I'm going to pause you right there because we're out of time for the main program, but I'm going to have you pick up on that thought when we continue in our post-show. So please join us at stream.aljazeera.com. But before you go there, Malika's got a few other leads we're following.
On this day, 20 years ago, a South African civil rights icon was assassinated. And today, activists are marking his memory online. Chris Hani was the leader of the South African Communist Party and was a key figure in the anti-apartheid movement. While using the hashtag #ChrisHani, netizens, including fellow activists and former President Nelson Mandela, tweeted about his legacy. Chris Hani touched the very heart of millions of us because he knew our pain and eased it by giving us hope, giving us courage. And Fana Mukena added, Chris Hani lived at a time when leadership was earned. Our next lead begs the question, is the video sharing platform Vine the newest crime-fighting tool? Following a stabbing at a Texas college, students used the Twitter app to update others on the school's security lockdown. Well, Mark Wallace, one of those students, posted this Vine as the campus went into lockdown. Have a look.
This is an emergency. Everybody stay inside of your rooms. Do not leave your rooms.
He also retweeted an Instagram photo posted by another student who claims to have helped apprehend the stabbing suspect, signing off with the hashtag cops are too slow. Next, as the number of bird flu cases in China climbs to 28, a popular pastime has taken a big hit: pigeon racing. An association of pigeon breeders has suspended all races until 60,000 pigeons receive the necessary vaccines. They're advising people keep pigeons caged for 2 months, but until vaccines for the newest strain of bird flu become available, there's no telling when they'll be able to safely take flight. And let us know what stories are catching your eye. Tweet us with the hashtag AJStream. Lisa?
All right, as promised, the post show is next at stream.aljazeera.com. On tomorrow's program, last year's brutal rape and death of a student sparked outrage at how women are treated in India. We look at what has and hasn't happened since then. Has the conversation changed, or is it back to the status quo? Send us your thoughts and your questions on that, and until then, we'll see you online. Welcome back to the Online Post Show. We're talking about the youth movement in Libya and the state of things post-revolution. I want to pick up with Karim Mezran. When we ended the main program, we were talking about the organization or lack thereof in the youth movement. Would the youth be better served by unifying within political structures that already exist in the country?
Both. They can try to militate into organizations that are already there. Create youth organizations, youth movement, and elaborate ideas, create political, and then try to attract the consensus of other sectors of society. May not succeed immediately, will succeed in the second moment. May not succeed in the second moment, it's already part of a learning process, of an educational process, of the gridlock the guys are talking about, the older generations, has to be broken. And it has to be broken only with the hyperactivism, with the hitting at this structure, culturally, politically, intellectually, and ideologically. That's the way, because you don't want to do it violently.
Yeah.
68 in Europe used far too much violence in order to obtain the same results. We would like not to see that.
Ayat, a lot of this discussion has been focused on the youth movement and how the youth are reaching out to other members of society, to some of these rogue groups. We haven't talked much about how anyone is reaching back. Have you gotten any positive feedback or requests for collaboration from the political elite or from anyone within the political establishment?
Politically, no. I think probably because our presence is so heavily reliant on our use of social media and our presence online, and we do have our members across the country inside, we haven't, I don't think that they've successfully recognized this kind of medium of interacting with youth as something that they need to even think about. We've taken our own efforts to the government ourselves. We've approached them for grants to kind of help us along with our projects. And if I may say that we have reached the top door of the whole government setup. And it seems to us in retrospect, looking back and after the fact, there is no structure. It is all a facade. Regardless of how many okays and yeses and promises you get from these people in the government, it actually means nothing. And that's kind of the frustration that we're experiencing as young people, and I think that most civil societies are experiencing, is that whatever the government sets itself up to be in front of Libyans, yes, they are making diplomatic relationships. Yes, they are handshaking all the right places, and yes, they are, spending our money where they think that it needs to go. Apart from that, it doesn't exist, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, Mohamed, this tweet is something that we referenced a little bit earlier, hinted at it. Khadija says there's a generational disconnect, and as a result, the older generation seems to find it difficult to imagine the youth being decision makers. Would you agree with that? I mean, is it difficult for people that have been in power for a while now, of course, since the fall of Gaddafi, to see themselves reaching out to younger people as change makers?
I think that like Mahmoud Jibril, the leader of the National Forces Alliance, recently said that his party, like in a campaign tune sort of thing, that his party is the party for youth. I think the elite in Libya at the moment understand that youth are crucial, but I think they will only reach out to them when it's the election time. So it is a matter of organizing ourselves and having direction, I guess. We shouldn't be just a tool that someone can use to get into power. No, we need to set the policies for those elite. If maybe we can't lead, yes, but we can set the policies. We can tell them this needs to be included in your manifesto, for example, and so on. So I think that politicians do understand that when it comes to voting, it will be the youth who will make the decision at the end of the day. But it feels at the moment that those elite are only going to reach out to the young people to promise them and make possibly empty promises to just get their vote. And that's it. We should capitalize on that, and we should make sure that they don't get our vote unless they include policies that we want them to include, for example.
May I say something also? And it's very important to get out of the mentality, which is old, of having the government think about you. Go to the government to get the funds, the resources, the money to do your organization. Because by doing that, you lose credibility, unfortunately, in the eyes of this generation, and you become pawns in their hands. What you have to do is try, if it's possible, obviously, to find the resources within society by self-taxation, by getting money from your membership, by doing other things, and not to have, waiting for grants from the government. Begin building up institutions, begin building up organizations with your own resources. At that moment, they will listen to you.
Ayat, after the NATO intervention, Libya was pretty much an element of daily news broadcasts internationally, and now the media's moved on elsewhere. You know, so people aren't really talking about the kidnapping of the Prime Minister's chief of staff. They're not talking about the storming of the Justice Ministry. How much has the lack of constant international media attention affected Libya moving forward, particularly with the focus on the youth movement?
I think it definitely affects the morale of young people and the morale of Libyans who feel like things are happening and things continue to amaze and in most respects negatively shine light on Libya, and having the international community kind of move on. It's disheartening, but it definitely doesn't deter these people from continuing to try to build their country, to move things forward. The international community is definitely an element that's there. But it's not all or nothing, and young people will continue to engage and ensure that they represent themselves. And we see that time and time again. Whenever something catastrophic happens that really doesn't represent Libyans, these young people will take to the streets because they know the world is watching at these specific times, and they represent themselves and in a very honorable and professional way, and in a universal way that makes Libyans relatable and makes the concern of Libyans something that is a concern of the international community as well.
You know, it's interesting that you said that, because you're outside of Libya right now, but we're speaking to Libyans in Libya, Libyans outside of Libya. We have a tweet now asking about that. Mohammed says, we must not forget about the Libyan youth only in Libya. How about the Libyan youth outside of Libya? I want to go to Hussam now, because you were in Libya, you are now outside of it, but I want your thoughts on that, and the disconnect between people in the diaspora, people back home, whether or not they can actually make that connection, because they're living two different realities.
Definitely. I mean, I have lived in the UK for 14 years, and there are many other young Libyans who have lived for longer. Whenever I go back home, or whenever any young person in particular who goes home, who goes to Libya after a long time away, would be faced with probably even a cultural shock. Sometimes it would take some effort to re-establish our connection with the people there, probably different ways of thinking. However, especially after the revolution, what I found very positive is that many young Libyans who probably otherwise wouldn't have visited Libya or wouldn't have identified themselves as Libyans are actually rediscovering themselves in terms of being Libyan. And many young people I know have decided to actually go back and settle in Libya. They have given up the luxuries that we get in the West and live in Libya and participate in building there. I've learned a very touching story of one of our friends on Twitter, actually. When she went back home, her accent showed that she was not from Libya. However, I mean that she was away from Libya for a while. However, the people there were quite pleased to have her back home and work in Libya and contribute to rebuilding Libya. Something else also for the NGOs in Libya. Many young people, young Libyans who return to Libya have actually established very successful NGOs with the skills they learned and the education.
I'm going to pause you there. Speaking of young Libyans, I want to get over to Seraj before the show closes. You've made some interesting observations. We do not have Seraj with us any longer. That's unfortunate. All right. Well, we are coming to the end of the program. Karim, I would love it if you could just give us your final thoughts on what the future holds.
My final thought is that these guys are the future of the country, and they should not lose their spirit, their emotion, their vibrance, and their vitality. We count on them. It's the only hope, the only positive, really the only positive factor that I can see in this moment is exactly these people who are trying to create a new country despite every other obstacle. I hope that the government listens to them. I hope that the government understands this discourse and operates in order to empower them to change this cultural, patriarchal, old dynamic that is still oppressing the whole of society.
All right. Karim Mezran, Ayat Mneina, and everyone on our Google Hangout, thank you so much for joining us today. Now, on tomorrow's program, last year's brutal rape and death of a student sparked outrage at how women are treated in India. We're going to look at what has and hasn't happened since then. Has the conversation changed, or is it just back to the status quo? Send us your thoughts and your comments on that. Until then, we'll see you online.